Parents of Reddit, what is the most darkling thing your children have said? My niece drew a picture of a man in her room that she kept telling her parents about. He had 2 different colored eyes, and one was grey. When asked why it was grey, she responded because he can see the storm coming. That's freaking awesome. We were driving down a dark, snowy highway late one evening, final stretch of a 16-hour-long road trip. My son, who was around 4 or 5 at the time, was in the backseat and becoming a bit restless. He suddenly covered his face with a blanket and announced loudly, "I don't want to get glass on my face." A few moments later, a pickup truck towing some snowmobiles pulled out in front of a tractor trailer a few cars in front of us and got hit, spinning out into the median. Fortunately, we avoided the accident completely. It was indeed a bit creepy, though, almost as though he predicted there was going to be an accident right in front of us. My 3-year-old daughter was in the bath playing with her toys with me and laughing. Suddenly her face deadpans. She looks me in the eye and tells me in a serious little voice, "Mummy, if you bit and ate all my fingers off, I wouldn't love you anymore." My 6-year-old daughter in the passenger seat a few days ago looked at me and said, "Dad, when I'm 7 I'm going to kill you." No, wait, when I'm 8. I had to ask, "So how are you going to do that?" She smiled and said, "I'm gonna drive over your head with this car." I have a 3-year-old daughter. She tells me that a red man comes into her room at night through her window. His name is Consequences and he's mean to her. She said he hurts her and stares at her while she is in her bed. She says that he comes in a spaceship with other red men. I have no idea where she would get the material for this story, and she really believes it. I've locked her window for her and pulled the blinds, all in an attempt to convince her that no one is getting in through her window. Sometimes, in the morning, she'll say it didn't work. "Mama, Consequences got in last night again. I hope it's a phase and it will pass." My 4-year-old son said, "Daddy, I want to drill into your tummy, crawl inside and eat your dinner." The food was okay, but I didn't think it was worth that much effort. When my niece was around 3 or 4 years old, she told me she used to have a baby but it drowned. The baby was called Peanut Butter, but still. Asking kids what the names of things are is 100% comedy gold. We having a digging area on the playground at my school, and I always ask the kids what the names of the bugs they find are. The most recent was an earthworm named Fireball. My daughter was about 2. I was giving her a bath. At the time, I was in the beginning of a mental breakdown due to marital stress. One of the things I tend to do is sort of live in a different world in my head while in real life, I'm on autopilot. So, my little world involved a sort of ritual use of a sword. I was playing a scene from that in my head while bathing my daughter. While I was standing her up, she asked, "What's the long knife?" I froze for a moment and just said, "It's a sword." I didn't say anything else, and from there on in, I tried really hard not to be in that world around her anymore. When my son was small, I was talking to him about growing potatoes. I described how you bank up the earth around them as they grow, and he said, "I used to do that when I was an old man." Yes, when my sister was around 3 we drove past an old tennis club, run down and no longer being used. When I was old I played tennis there. My friend's 7-year-old kids pretended to put me in jail. Our conversation went something like this. Me, what did I do? Forget to brush my teeth? Didn't do my homework? Her, you murdered a 23-year-old woman while she was jogging in the early morning. Me. When my cousin was 2 years old or so, her mom got pregnant again. One day she went to hug her mom's belly and said, "Little brother sick." A few days later she had a miscarriage. Frick. My daughter, about 5 years old at the time, riding with me in my truck. A gnat, mosquito, bug of some kind is buzzing around her and bothering her, so she's complaining about it. So I told her to just swat it. She visually follows it until it's against the passenger window and quickly smashes it with her hand. She then turns to me with the strangest look in her eyes and says it was my first time killing something. Recently actually, my son always says odd things. Usually they're funny, but this one threw me for a loop. He is 8. I was telling him how much I love him and thanks for being in my life. He said, "I didn't choose this life. I couldn't control how it began, but I can control how it ends." That kid should go into the movie tagline business. When you turn off the lights, That's when the black circles come. They come down like this, holds his hands in the air above his bed, and they stay for a second, then zoop they go inside, slapping the hands to his chest, then, barely holding back tears. I hate it. When I was little, my grandfather, whom I called Pop Pop, always promised to take me fishing. Things always came up, or I wasn't in town to go with him when he went, etc. He died when I was 7 and I never had a chance to go fishing. I had never gone fishing, and have not since he died either. Fast forward 20 years, my wife and I have a 3-year-old daughter. I've never spoken to her about my Pop Pop, and I've never talked about him in front of her. I haven't brought him up to anyone since before my daughter was born. One day, I'm off with my daughter and she's in her room. Suddenly, she comes running into the living room where I'm sitting, and says the following. Daddy, we have to go fishing. We don't live near a lake or anything, so this was kinda weird for her to say in the first place. Me, why do we have to go fishing? Because Pop Pop says you have to take me. Me, wait, what? Who told you? Pop Pop says you need to take me to go fish. I'm not really a believer in an afterlife or anything, but I dang sure took her fishing. She has not mentioned Pop Pop since then, and it's been almost a year since that happened. I was with my sister, her husband, and their 2-year-old daughter. We were talking about loved ones that had recently passed. My father had died sometime recently. My brother-in-law went and grabbed a picture of his mother, who had died in a car crash when he was 6, to show me. When my niece saw the picture though, she started laughing. We asked her what was so funny and she looked at us and said, "That's my special friend who sings to me." I still shiver a bit just thinking about it. I would really cry if I heard this. I would love for my dad to be a part of my son's life. When he was a little infant, probably 2 months old, he used to stare and laugh at this bookcase full of my dad's things. I was explaining to my niece the difference between things that can and can't change about people. She was confused because she'd met a set of 3 siblings and the eldest wasn't the tallest. So I told her that one day even she, an itty bitty 4-year-old, could be taller than me, a big huge grown up. But even if she was taller, I would always be older. She looked me serious as you like and says, "You'll be dead sooner too. Not if you keep that crap up." Not my child, but I child I was working with in preschool. You have a baby inside you, but you won't be a mommy. I found out I was pregnant that day and miscarried the next week. When my son was 3, he kept saying he had a baby sister with a pink bow, but she died. We never had a baby girl. However, we did have a miscarriage just before that episode. Playing tea party. Little one keeps passing me cake. I dutifully eat each piece she passes me. It was poison. You died. Oh, okay then. She then proceeded to chop me up, mix my chopped parts with some spice in a pot, and then serve the resulting stew to her mother. I play Lego because I can control it and nobody is mean or cruel. My daughter. This broke me down right there at the dinner table. It crushed me. She was having a hard time at school with some butthole kid. And Lego was her escape world. It's not something he said but something he's done. He's named after his great-grandfather who passed away before he was born. My son would carry around a picture of his great-grandfather and just look at it or sit down with him at the dinner table. The reincarnation of a narcissist. To our 3-year-old son, what would you do if we had another baby? Our son. I'd kill it. I was putting my nephew down for bed and surprisingly, he was giving me a hard time. Okay, time for bed. No, don't leave yet, I'm scared. Scared of what? My nightmares. Well, maybe tonight you'll have dreams. No, I won't. And how do you know that? I only have nightmares. He said this with such incredible sadness I had to read a few more chapters of Captain Underpants and pour a glass of scotch just to make Emmy feel better. Child had woken up early, so she was watching cartoons next to me in my bed while I tried to wake up. I'd heard a funny sound downstairs earlier that I mentally blamed on the dogs. Then kiddo leans over to me and remarks, "Oh, there's a man in the house." Awake, awake, awake. Never found anything. Never got any further details from her. Not weird phrases, but my 2-year-old will get frustrated and switch to her demon voice. She makes her voice deep and scratchy sounding until you know. Freaks people out the first time they hear it, but my husband and I find it funny now. My 6-year-old nephew told my brother that everyone on Earth was a figment of Jonah's imagination and that when Jonah wakes up, we'll all disappear. When asked who Jonah is, he replied verbatim, "He's the one who sleeps, the dreamer in the dream." Made my skin crawl the first time he told me. Not a parent, but a former teacher. I taught English in a school in Spain, and I wasn't supposed to let the kids know that I speak Spanish, so that they are forced to communicate in English. A 10-year-old girl comes up to me one day, grabs me by the hand, and says, with the most horrifying straight face ever, "Te vas a la muerte, you're going to die." I was so shocked at the randomness of it that my jaw must have dropped. She then laughed her head off and said, "Hey, you do speak Spanish." She then skipped away, laughing and smiling. Creepiest thing a kid has ever said to me, and probably the most clever thing a kid ever did while I was a teacher. My son said that Christians are obviously the worst drivers. When I asked why, he said because all you ever see are crosses on the sides of the road. Not my child but myself, apparently, because I can't remember. I was 4 and now I am 28. But my parents told me, I once got my toe stuck under a door and lost skin due to it. When I went to kindergarten the day after, the teacher asked what happened. I told her my dad did it with a knife. My parents had to come to school that evening for a talk. Oops. I told my kindergarten or first grade teacher that my mom did drugs. She smokes cigarettes. They called her in and she had to explain it, lol. My dad is the owner and runs a hostel in Buenos Aires. We have plenty of people from all over the world, but especially from South America. More often than not, there are no kids around, but every once in a while we receive families. So, there's this family in the hostel, one little boy and his parents. The little boy is the only kid in the entire place. Chilly winter night, he appears in the common room asking who is the little girl with the yellow raincoat in the bathroom. Once again, he's the only underage in the entire place. The spooky moment comes 6 months later. There's no kid this time. Fortismuting lady from Spain asks us whose child is the little girl with the yellow raincoat in the bathroom. Oh, BTW. The door for that bathroom constantly closes by itself. It must be the wind. Also, the building used to be a nursing home and a mental asylum before that. Not a parent. Blah blah blah. My mom told me that when I was a kid, around the age of 4, I would go to my great-grandmother every day to spend some time with her, and every time I was going home, I would say to her, as a good religious child I was, "God be with you." But one time, when I was leaving, I told her, "Go with God." According to my mom, my mom, correct me, but I insist in saying go with God. That night, my great-grandmother died. My father told us one day our baby brother, maybe 3 or 4 at the time, took my dad into the master bedroom, pointed in a corner and said, "Daddy, the devil lives down there." I'm still living in that house. Haven't noticed anything strange happening other than an above average amount of BS. If you drop toast it's definitely jelly side down. Not my kid, but my brother once woke up in the middle of the night and started screaming at the top of his lungs. He was 4 years old at that age, and we had roomed together. My parents rushed into our room and asked my brother what had happened, while my brother was still sobbing in his bed. After a while my brother looked still terrified, but he calmed down a bit and was able to answer the question. I had a really scary dream. Mom tried to calm him. "Oh, honey, it's okay now." What it was about she asked, expecting nightmares from the Jurassic Park we were watching earlier that day, but his answer even more chilling. "I dreamed that Pinky and the Brain were purple." RIP my sanity. This is a combo between my nephew and my son. When my nephew was 3 years old, he was sitting by my mom's back door looking outside. When she asked what he was doing, he said playing with the little boy out there. There was no little boy. Many years later, when my own son was 3 years old, he was in that same back room and asked if he could go outside and play with that little boy out there. Still no little boy. What makes it creepy is that my grandmother, their great-grandmother, lost a little boy when he was 3 years old to pneumonia. My mom still lives in the same house. When our dog died, without us yet having properly attempted to explain death, our then 2-year-old said all her thoughts left her body. My nephew just did a low whistle and said she did, then went back inside while my brother and I tried not to cry about our dead dog that we grew up with. Not a parent, blah blah blah. Babysitting a young girl, 4-5 years old. She wakes up, stares out into the pitch black garden. No street lights within a few hundred meters. Can't see anything but black outside. And says baddie man over and over. Cue me crapping myself. I tell her everything's fine and to go back to bed. She's not disturbed by anything. Just keeps saying baddie man. She goes to sleep and my paranoia grows. Every sound has me on edge. Eventually her parents come home and I'm like, oh no, everything's fine, and walk home. Next day I see them and tell them about it. Apparently she'd recently watched The Lion King and they had a hedge in their garden that the kid thought looked like Scar, who she called baddie man. I totally wouldn't have walked home without talking to the parents. I wouldn't have been able to sleep. My daughter and I were playing at the park when she told me she wants to burn bodies when she's older. Little creeped but okay. Turns out her granddad told me about the mortuary across the street and she saw the smoke billowing out. She still wants to cremate people. 60% of my graduating class in mortuary school were female, and the rate of cremation is going up steadily. Job security will be pretty good. When my niece was 3, she covered up my head with a blanket and held it down. I moved my head out where I could see her. She said, "You can't come out," and smothered me again. I laughed and said why. She gritted her teeth and angrily said, "Because I don't want you to." Run, bro. I can't remember if she was 3 or 4, but our little daughter's voice peeped up from the backseat one morning. "Dad, do babies bathe in blood?" My then 3 years old daughter walked downstairs in the morning and said, "Look what I can do," and she crossed her eyes. I asked her how she learned to do that and she said, "The boy taught me at night." Me, what boy? Her, the boy with the glasses. He did this and she held her finger up and zoomed it to her nose and crossed her eyes. She said he laughed and laughed. Not too scary, right? Only, that's how my brother taught me to cross my eyes when I was 5 years old. He died when I was 7 years old. My young daughter said she made a new friend. Her mother and I are like, "Cool hun, what's her name?" "It's Casey Jr." So then we ask when we can invite her over to play. My kid says we can't, cause she's dead. Later that night, after putting my daughter to bed, I hear laughter and talking coming from her room. I go to investigate. As I get to the door, I hear my daughter say, "No, Casey, stop tickling me," amidst bouts of giggles. I walk into the room quickly, not knowing what to expect. There is just my daughter in the room, nothing else. Officially creeped out. I'm the child in question here. My mother was reading The Stand when I was 3-4. There is a character called the Trash Can Man, who is basically a mentally disabled pyro with a penchant for blowing up trash cans, before being empowered by the villain to blow up much bigger things. Having read the book much later in life, there's a kind of twisted child vibe with this guy. One evening while she read alone in her room, I came skipping in singing, "The Trash Can Man, the Trash Can Man. He is gonna get ya and you know he can." She claimed she got real serious and asked where I'd heard that, and I wouldn't say another word about it. There's also a story in which she claims I basically described being abducted by aliens and similarly shut up about it right after. I tend to think I was just an early expert troll. This is Diamond SpongeBob. He only appears every 200,000 videos. Subscribe for good luck. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day, you magnificent people.